What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another Retro Yu-Gi-Oh video and back with another Chimeratech Format video, the format based around January 2007, SJC Orlando of that year, and a format going up to the September 2006 ban list using the December hit of Cyber-Stein, and a card pool going up to Structure Deck 10. Now, there's a lot of fun things that you can do in this format, and the meta is very much undefined. We're holding a tournament on the YGO from Zero Discord server right now to sort of try and nail down the meta a bit more. But even after that, I think there will be still more room to grow, still more things to try, things like that in the format. So I think it's a great time to get into the format and try it out. And head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server if you want to do that. But I'm bringing this up because I could keep exploring this format just for weeks and weeks on end. There's still plenty more decks to try out. But, you know, I do have to get moving on to the next format pretty soon. So this will be my last video going over one of these decks and playing it out in games and showing it off to y'all. I might return to this format in the future to do things like this, especially if there's some winning deck lists that really catch my eye. But for now, we'll be moving on to the next format, which will be Airblade, which I'll spend only a little bit of time in because, you know, it's a very one-note format, and then we'll be diving in to the next format, which should be pretty exciting. So definitely subscribe if you want to sort of follow my journey through that, and subscribe if you like the content in general as well. But diving into what this deck is specifically here, this was a deck sent to me by M. Shobes on Discord, and this is a really cool deck, and I decided to feature this as my last deck in the format because I think that it sort of ties together with what's going on in another retro format. In Edison format, there was experimentation with a zombie list using Reaper of the Nightmare, which you bring out off instant fusion, and then you can bring him back with Book of Life. And this deck is doing something very similar, except instead of doing synchro plays with it, it's using it in a Monarch package, because instant fusion gets sort of tribute fodder out on field, tribute that off for a Monarch, and then you Book of Life back the Reaper on the Nightmare. Reaper on the Nightmare is a pretty good card. It can attack indirectly every turn and rip cards out of your opponent's hand, and it's really annoying for them to deal with. So I think this is a pretty neat idea. Pretty cool that, you know, they brought tech discovered in Edison format back into Chimeratech format. Shows that, you know, playing in different retro formats is sort of a symbiotic relationship. You know, things discovered in one can easily transfer over to another if the circumstances are right. And so I figured I'd try out this deck and see how it actually translates over to this format here. Going through the card by card, we've got our Monarch lineup, triple Thestalos, double Mobius, triple Zaborg, along with one Ryukoki, which can go into off of Pyramid Turtle as well. We're playing 3 of those. You can also go into Spirit Reaper off the Pyramid Turtles as well, which is, you know, a fusion material for the Reaper on the Nightmare, but more importantly, it's just a wall. You can block off your opponent a bit and potentially get a hand rip as well. We've got triple Cyber Dragon to enable our Monarchs and also just get more aggressive. We got a Breaker to deal with our opponent's back row. We got DD Warrior Lady to deal with their monsters, Exiled Force to deal with their monsters as well, and a Sangan to search out a variety of things in our deck. Treeborn Frogs here as well to enable our Monarchs, and again, searchable off Sangan here. For the spells, we got triple Book of Life to bring back our zombies and banish things from our opponent's grave. This is really good in the mirror match as well, because we can banish our opponent's Treeborn Frogs, which is very nice. And if we're up against like something like Machine OTK or something like that, we can banish Cyber Dragon from our opponent's graveyard to shut off things like Overload Fusion, so that's pretty nice as well. We got a Book of Moon here, just a flexible option in this format. Double BrainCon here to take control of our opponent's stuff and tribute it off for a Monarch. We got a Comfy to rip apart our opponent's hand. We've got a Graceful Strategy to draw 3, pitch 2. We've got a Heavy Storm to blow away our opponent's back row. Double Instant Fusion to bring out our fusion materials for tribute fodder. We've got a Last Will here to bring out monsters from our deck, and we're going to be tributing quite often, given that we've got a Monarch strat here. We got an MST to deal with our opponent's back row, a Soul Exchange to bring out our Monarchs as well, a Mirror Force to deal with our opponent's aggression, double Raigeki Break to pitch things like the Kokis, like Dead Monarchs occasionally, or even like a Treeborn Frog as well, to pop our opponent's stuff. We got a Ring to deal with their monsters, and a TT to blow up the board. The side deck has a lot of different options here. Triple Dust Shoot for if we know we're going first, or if we're up against a deck like Monarchs that, you know, is very, very good against. We've got Triple Decree against decks that are more trap focused. This can just be an instant killer. We've got Double Deck Devastation Virus. This can be used with our Ryukokis here. And the main deck that you're bringing this in against is Gadgets. That's the big thing that it hits. But, you know, there might be other decks in the format as well that it hits that has some synergy against, so you could potentially bring this in against those. We got a Jinzo here to, again, shut off traps. We got Mobius against more back row focused strategies. We've got a Koki here to go into off our Turtles and potentially bring in if we're bringing in the deck Devies. We've got a Knock here to deal with our opponent's sets, and we got Triple T-Roar against the OTK decks. Fusion deck doesn't really matter too much here. We're not going into any of the Cyber Dragons here, but we could potentially go into Reaper on the Nightmare or Flame Ghost as well. These are both zombies that we can bring back with the Book of Life. You generally won't go into Flame Ghost, but there are weird niche scenarios where it could potentially come up, so it is good to know about here. But that's going to do it for the deck breakdown. Let's dive into some games and see how the deck actually performs. Okay, first up, we got Jim Bob, a free from Genshin channel. Always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the games here, and we are going to win the rock, paper, scissors, and go first. This is, I mean, it's a good, okay, well, that's a Monarch. I was going to say it's a good hand if we draw a Monarch, and we did indeed draw a Monarch, so that's pretty good. We're just going to set this TT, pass back to them. If they summon out a thing that we actually want to TT, we can use it there. If they don't, you know, we can potentially brain con it, bring out Mobius, or we get instant fusion to go into Mobius as well. So we got a lot of different options there. And no Dust Shoot from us. They've got a Dark World Lightning, unfortunately, so our TT will not be able to deal with that. They'll be able to pop that, bring back that gold, and this means that they're on a Dark World deck. Dark World Burn is a deck that's done well in some previous formats here, and something that I think is pretty decent in Chimeratech format. It has some bad matchups. Fortunately for us, Monarch is generally a bad matchup for it. But it's still something that we can play around with here. We're going to go for Instant Fusion because given that they've got just big guys here, a Brain Con could potentially be a lethal push later. And I like doing this because then we could potentially, if we draw Book of Life, go into the Reaper on the Nightmare, bring that back, get ripping into our opponent's hand. So we're going to tribute over that Reaper for a Mobius here, pop their back row, hitting a Ceasefire, which will deal 1,000. That can actually matter here, unfortunately. And then main 2, we're actually going to set the Raigeki Break, pass back to our opponent. We could try and bluff the Heavy Storm. I don't really think that's as necessary, though. And we need things to pitch in hand. I'm not saying we pitch the Heavy Storm, but if they don't set much more back row, we may need to use that later. Luckily, we draw Koki, which is a really good pitch here. We go for the Heavy Storm, seeing if that's fine. And then as chain, we're going to pitch the Koki for this Raigeki Break, popping their monster. We hit a Dimension Wall, so I'm glad I did that instead of going for the Exiled Force on their monster. And now we can attack in for 2,400 with the Mobius here. And we could potentially set the Brain Control as bluff. I don't really want to do that. I figure I'll save it for later because we are getting to the range where we could potentially set up a lethal line if they have to like summon out a Dark World monster, and also we don't want to turn on their Dark World Lightning as well, so it's better to keep that in hand. But they're going to go for a Hydreigeddon here, switch our Mobius to defense with that Econ, bring out another Hydreigeddon from the deck, and then they're going to get in for 1,600 more damage here. So it's going to be a bit unfortunate for us. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Treeborn Frog, which is okay, but it's not the best thing in the world here. We can still, you know, set it as setup for later, but we can use Brain Con to clear both their Geddons at least. And that will indeed go through. Main 2, we're just going to set Treeborn Frog, pass back to them, but we're sort of living on a prayer here. We're up against a burn deck, so it's very unlikely we actually manage to get out of this one alive. They're going to go for an Exiled off that Rhoda and pop our Treeborn Frog there. We are able to get that back, but we can't really use it for this Zaborg here, so that's a bit awkward for us there. We're just going to pass back to them, and just hope that we manage to draw into a good Monarch soon. Cyber Dragon is something. We're just going to tribute off that Treeborn Frog for the Cider, attack in for 2,100. If they've got Cylinder or Dimension Wall, we basically lose the game no matter what. No point in waiting it out if they do have it. Looks like they don't, though, and so we're just going to pass back to them and hope that this will be enough. They're going to set another pass back to us. We think about this in standby because they could have TT potentially, and if we bring back Frog, they TT. But I feel like we're still in a good spot because if they do have TT, we get to bring back the Frog again. And also we have like Pyramid Turtle that we can run out if we really want to after that. But we're going to attack him with Sidra. We're not going to commit the Turtle because they could be holding the TT for later. But we'll just set the Turtle there, pass back to them. There is a chance that they Dark World Lightning this and pop the Turtle. That is unfortunate for us, but we do have Exiled Force to pop that Dark World monster, and we've also got Zaborg as well to tribute over the Frog, potentially go for lethal that way. They are going to go for Premat here, paying 8, bringing back a Hydreigeddon here. And they'll attack into our Treeborn Frog. That will get them out another Hydreigeddon. And to me, I know that they've got something to stop our Cyber Dragon attack, because otherwise, this is just lethal damage on board. Main 2, they're going to go for a card D, though, pitching 2 from us and 1 from them. And we draw into some pretty good ones. We draw into Brain Con, which can take their monster. Of course, that might be a little bit risky, given that, you know, they are at 500 life, and we don't know what that last back row is. And probably something that can stop us here. So what we're going to do instead, we're going to go for a Book of Life. We're going to bring back Koki, and we're going to bring back Gold here. I figure Koki is better than Reaper. I could potentially have brought back the Reaper instead. But I figure Koki is also just a big body to hit over these Geddons with, and it should be fine. And yeah, that will be the end of the game. It looks like the set was just an Econ. So yeah, against 2 monsters here, that Econ's not going to do much. So that's going to be the end of game 1. Going into game 2, we bring in our Decrees to shut off those traps because, you know, it's a burn deck, so they do play a lot of traps there. I keep in the Thestalos. I shouldn't have done that. I should have sided out the Thestalos. But luckily, it doesn't actually come up that much in this game. I mean, we do have it in hand, and that would be very awkward if we summon it out and pitch a Dark World, but we can potentially pitch that here. But given that we got double Book of Life, what I actually do is I pitch the Koki and the Turtle, because now we can get really aggressive with these Books of Life here. So we're going to tribute off the Zaborg, pop their monster. They're going to go for Ceasefire to at least get in some damage. But, you know, we can go for a Book of Life now, bring back that Koki, banish the Reaper, and then get in for 4,800 here. So that's a lot of damage coming down the pipeline. They're already down to 3,200. And now we can also set this Book of Moon, pass back to them. If we get them low enough, we actually can just bring out Thessalos and try and hit into a Dark World, which would be kind of funny. But they go for Dark World Lightning on our back row. We Book of Moon down our Koki here because it's got more defense than the Zaborg does. And if they got another Dark World Lightning, that is kind of rough. But, you know, we just got to hope that they don't. Looks like they don't. They're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw a instant fusion here. So we could potentially do some plays of like instant fusion, tribute setting the Thessalos over a Reaper, and then Book of Lifing back the Reaper. But they don't have any monsters engraved, so we can't even activate Book of Life now. So it's not really a feasible strategy right now. But what we're going to do is we're going to attack into that Hydreigeddon and then attack directly with the Koki, and then just pass back to them. Now, next turn, we can go for that play that I mentioned there. They're going to go for a Kaiku, tribute that off for an Econ to crash in both of our monsters here. And then they're just going to pass back to us. So, I mean, this is just going to be the end of the game. We don't really need to do anything too fancy here. We can just Book of Life, bring back the Koki, and that'll be the end of the game. Now, it's wasn't the only game we got with the deck. We actually played another match after this, so let's dive into that one now. We're diving into game 2, and we're both playing the same thing because it was a direct rematch after this. So, we're diving in. We're on Monarchs, they're on Dark World, and that will change how we play this first game a little bit here. We don't really want to set any of our monsters and turn on like a Dark World Lightning. We'd rather just be proactive on our following turn. So we're just going to pass back to them and see what they do. They're going to just set one, pass back to us. We draw a Book of Life, which is pretty good here overall. We're going to bring out a Breaker, try and pop that back row, and we hit a Dimension Wall, which is exactly what I was sort of expecting from that. So we're going to attack in with 1,600 here, and then pass back to them. If they do go aggressive here, we've got Sidra into Zaborg, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. They're going to bring out a Sidra of their own, attack over our Breaker. That's perfectly fine. We'll take the 5 here. And then main 2, they're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Reaper here, which is pretty cool. We've got a couple different options here. We could special summon out Sidra, summon Reaper, and rip in for a hand rip. But if we do that, then we could potentially hit a Dark World, which I don't want to do. So we're going to bring out this Sidra. They're going to ring our Sidra to keep us off that, which is a bit unfortunate here. And we're just going to set a Sangan, set a Raigeki Break, pass back to them. There is the risk of them going Dark World Lightning here and bringing out a Dark World, which would be kind of rough, but we do have Raigeki Break to pop one of their monsters here. And if they pop the Sangan with Dark World Lightning, we do get a search as well, so not the worst thing in the world for us here. But that ring on the side was definitely pretty rough for us here. They're going to bring out a DD Warrior Lady. We are going to Raigeki Break, pitch this Reaper, pop that Warrior Lady. We pitched Reaper, so now our Book of Life is online in case we want to go for that. And now they're going to attack in to our Sangan here. We're going to think about exactly what to search. We're going to search out a Pyramid Turtle, getting more zombies in rotation for Book of Life, and also potentially bring out a Koki next turn as well. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw Thessalos, which is not really good in this current state of things. We're going to go for the Book of Life now, bring back this Reaper and banishing that TD Warrior Lady here. And then we're going to tribute that for a Zaborg, popping the Sidra. The other line of play here was potentially summoning out the Pyramid Turtle and just trying to crash into the Sidra to bring out a Koki, or just setting the Turtle. But I don't want to set Turtle because that plays too much into Dark World Lightning. And if I just summon out the Turtle, attack into the Sidra, then we might not potentially be able to clear the Sidra in case they've got a battle trap there. So I'd rather just do this. So I'll attack in for 24. They've got a Magic Cylinder here to bounce that back to us. And now we're in a bit of a scary spot with only 3,000 life points here. They're going to summon out an Injection Fairy Lily, pay 2,000, and drop us down by 1,000 here. And that makes things a little bit scary for us. They've only got one more activation of Lily left here. But, you know, if we set Turtle into like a Dark World Lightning or something, we're in a really bad spot. I think what I might want to do here is just go Brain Control, you know, summon out Thessalos, try and rip in for lethal. But if their hand is Dark World, which it very likely is, then that potentially gets a Silva online for them or a Gold online for them, in which case we lose our Thessalos. I think the honestly best play here might have been to Braincon, target the Lily, and then tribute set into Thessalos, but that runs into the same problem that setting the Turtle does, so I don't necessarily want to do that either. So I don't really have a good option here. I just choose the Exiled Force, the Lily, because again, you know, this doesn't turn on their Dark World Lightnings, and I feel like they probably have Dark World Lightning and some Dark Worlds in hand. I could have potentially gone for the risky play of doing Braincon into Thessalos, but in this matchup, I don't really think it was worth it. They're going to go for a Hydreigeddon here, attacking in for 1,600, dropping us down to 400, setting one, passing back to us, and now we can't even set this Turtle because, you know, or we can't summon it and crash, that is, because we lose the game on that. So we've just got to hope they don't have Dark World Lightning. That's our only play at this point. So we just got to go for that. They will MST our Braincom, which is dead at that point. And then they're going to bring out a Breaker. Attack in to our Turtle there. And luckily we can bring out this Koki just in attack to wall off their attacks there. They're going to bring out another Geddon. And then just pass back to us. So it seems like they didn't have Dark World Lightning, so maybe I shouldn't have been playing around that as much. But I still feel like it was good to play around, but I don't know. We go for the Koki here into the Hydrogen. They do have the Dimension Wall, and that's going to be the end of the game. Looks like they just had a Cider in hand, so they didn't draw into any Dark Worlds here. So if we had gone for Thessalos, we probably would have been in a pretty good spot. But, we did have the Dimension Wall here set, which would have actually killed us. So nothing we really could have done here to get out of that. And that is one of these scary things about Dark World Burn, is that it can get you into these spots where, like, you don't really have a right move. You kind of got to play into certain things, and if they've got it, they win. And if they don't, you win. But you got to know when to commit for that and when not to commit for that. So we bring in the Decrees. We take out the Thessaloses as well here. So I feel like we've got a pretty good game 2 on our hands. We bring out this Turtle, set the Decree, pass back to them. We summon out the Turtle because we don't want to play into Dark World Lightning. If they Dark World Lightning the Decree, we can flip Decree and, cause it to basically resolve without effect. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw into a Cider. We could potentially Soul Exchange their set, but why do that when we get this Exiled Force to do it for us? We're going to pop that Lily, attack in for 1200, and then just pass back to them. They are going to set 1, pass back to us, and now we'll flip with the Decree. The reason we didn't flip with the Decree last turn is because I was trying to bait them into using their back row, and then we flip Decree, and they basically lose a card here. There's arguments that I shouldn't have done that. I should have just flipped Decree up, at the end of their last turn. But if they used this back row anyway and it was a trap, we could just flip Decree and shut it off. But now they've got 2 back row, I don't want them to be able to chain one of their other back row to our Decree activation. So now I do go for the Decree activation here. So we're going to flip that up. And we're just going to attack in for 12. Again, we don't want to summon out Reaper to get in a hand rip because that's a bit awkward if it hits a Dark World. So they're going to set 2, set another, pass back to us. I feel like that probably is a Morphing Jar there, given how much they set. So we're going to go for a Soul Exchange here, tribute out a Cyber Dragon, and indeed hit over that Morphing Jar. So I'm very glad I did that. We'll pass back to them. I could have also set this other Decree here, just as for redundancy, if they draw into MST or something. But given they didn't MST last turn, I don't really think that they have an MST right now. And given that a lot of their traps are just things that sort of react to us trying to do something to them, we can just set this Decree on the following turn and do stuff with that. But they're going to pre-map back this Lily, go for Econ, tribute the Lily to take our Pyramid Turtle. That way they can tribute that for a Silva and attack over our Sidra. I think that's a really, really neat play, and I think it's a very good play for this circumstance. Unfortunately for them, it won't quite be enough because now we can go for Book of Life, bring back our Turtle there, and banish their Lily, and now we can crash that Turtle into the Silva. This will cost us some life points, but we're at 7,800, now 6,700, and this brings us out a Koki here to attack in to the Silva. So I feel like it's a pretty good trade-off overall. They're going to take 100 from that, and then we're just going to pass back to them. They are going to set another pass back to us. We draw into a Braincom, which is pretty good. We're just going to attack in for 2,400, and that will go through. So now they've basically got 1 turn to figure out something to do. We set this Decree because now, given that we've got that 1 turn clock on them, we do want to have this Decree live in case they draw into MST or Breaker or something like that. They go for Dark World Lightning on our other trap. We will chain Decree to it because Decree does not prevent the activation of other traps, it just negates their effects on field. So we can indeed activate this. They set 1 pass back to us. We draw Instant Fusion here, which doesn't really do anything for us at this point, but we can still attack in with the Koki there, hitting into a Treeborn Frog, which is probably not coming back, given that we've got double Decree up, shutting off their back row. We set a Frog of our own. Reason for doing this is that if they Dark World Lightning it, it's hitting a pretty low value target, and they do get out a Dark World monster, but our Koki is stronger than that monster, and we've also got Book of Life to then shut off the Treeborn Frog there. But, if they don't hit it, then it's potential bluff. And so I do like it just being set here. If we draw into a Monarch, we can then tribute that next turn as well. They go for knock on that. I'm perfectly fine with losing that Treeborn here in this circumstance. They set a monster of their own. We just attack over that with the Koki there, and it's a DD Warriorly, so that will get that out of rotation for us, unfortunately. We can just set this Reaper, pass back to them. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Sangan, and this actually should be lethal damage here. We go for a Book of Life here, bring back the Turtle, and then banishing the Silva there. Then we go for a Sangan, flip up the Reaper, and this actually will be lethal damage. We attack with Sangan, then Turtle, then Reaper, so that way the Reaper won't get a hand rip on them, and it will actually deal that last bit of damage. So very cool stuff for Game 2. Going into Game 3, we keep things largely the same with the Decrees, taking out the Thessalos, etc. And let's see how we do here. Oh, also we brought in Jinzo because just like with Decree, it is very good. And also if we're taking out the Thestalos, you don't necessarily want to replace them with non-tribute monsters. So we brought in the Jinzo and the Mobius as well. But they're going to go for a Dust Shoot here, send back our Turtle, which is quite unfortunate given that we've got this Book of Life here. And we go for Coffee, just get a peek at what they're working with and see that they've got a BrainCon, a Gold, a Ceasefire, and a Dark World Lightning. Of these, I think I'm actually most afraid of the Sidra. I'm not going to pitch the Gold for sure. Or not the Sidra, the BrainCon, because if we ever bring out our Sidra, they can just BrainCon the Sidra and then tribute over for gold, or same thing with Jinzo, etc. Can allow them to get really aggressive here, and we can sort of play around the Dark Road Lightning for the whole of the game. They can always Dark Road Lightning one of their own cards, so there is the risk that they Dark Road Lightning their own set card, but then we get Sidra out, then we tribute for Jinzo, and we're feeling fine there. So I think I actually do want to send the BrainCon to grave. I think that's the most threatening card to us at this point in time. And we're just going to pass back to them because, again, we don't want to play into Dark World Lightning. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Royal Decree, which is pretty perfect here. We go for Heavy because we don't want a Heavy while Royal Decree's up. And then we set the Decree, pass back to them. They are going to activate Dark World Lightning. We've got Decree for that, and they're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Reaper. We don't really want to attack in with that Reaper, so we'll just set it here, pass back to them. They go for an Exiled Force, popping that Reaper, and then they're going to set two more and pass back to us. We draw a Book of Moon, which isn't going to be the best here, but we can bring back that Reaper with the Book of Life, banish the Exiled Force out of their graveyard, and then tribute for Jinzo to get in for 2,400 here. So maybe getting a bit aggressive, but I know that their hand is gold. I know that they get a Ceasefire in the back row there. I don't really think it's the most likely thing in the world that they can actually, out our Jinzo that easily. We set a book here, pass back to them. They are going to go for a breaker here. They're going to try and break our new set. That's very interesting, but we're going to book down the breaker there to get rid of it. They're going to pass back to us. We draw a Zaborg here, and we can attack in with that Jinzo. They've got an Econ to switch that Jinzo to defense, and because we don't want to lose our Jinzo to the breaker, we're actually going to tribute that Jinzo for a Zaborg here, pass back to them. And I feel pretty good about this. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Instant Fusion. We could potentially Instant Fusion out a Reaper, tribute that for Cyber Dragon, and then get in for 4,500. But I don't really think I need to do that. So I'm just going to attack in for 24, save the Instant Fusion for if I draw into another Monarch here. And I'm going to pass back to them. They activate a Graceful Charity here, draw 3, pitch 2. They're going to pitch a Heavy and a Gold, and pitching that Heavy is a bit scary for me because it means they probably have a way to deal with our Decree here. So that's kind of rough. They're just going to set one, pass back to us. We draw a Breaker here. So I want to bait out whatever they've got in that back row right away. So I'm going to bring out that Breaker, try and pop the new back row. It is a Ring. They're going to chain the Ring to the Breaker, and then they're going to chain the MST to the Ring to pop the Decree. Now, they slightly mess up here. They activate the Ceasefire in response to the MST, so the Ceasefire will still be negated by the Decree. And that actually does end up mattering a little bit here, but ultimately, it doesn't affect the outcome of the game, which may indicate how this game will go. So if they had activated the Decree at the right point, then we would have taken 1,500 more and been at 3,100. So pretty bad spot to be in because we don't have a way to deal with that gold, and that gold's getting in for a bit more damage here. So they're going to attack in for 700, dropping us down to 3,900 here. And then they're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw an Instant Fusion. Not really the best right now. We could potentially Instant Fusion just to destroy a Reaper and get it engraved. But given that we've got 3,900 life points against a burn deck, I don't necessarily want to pay 1,000 for no real good reason. We've got plenty of Tribute Monsters left in deck that we can bring out off the Instant Fusion. We don't need to do it for just the 2 Book of Life left in deck. Although, if we do manage to do that, then we draw Book of Life, and then we bring back the Reaper, get in for 800. So, that is something to consider that we could do. But again, I don't really think it's worth doing right now. They're going to attack into the Sidra, set one, pass back to us. We draw into a Book of Life here. So I'm a little bit punished for that play, or not doing the Instant Fusion play last turn. But yeah, because they didn't have any back row there to stop it. So if we had done that, then that would have been lethal. But again, I didn't really think it was worth it because you look at the amount of Tribute Monsters in our deck, and but then again, I got 2 Instant Fusions, so maybe I should have just cracked one to have it in rotation. But that's sort of one of the things that you learn with this deck. You got to figure out how to actually use it well. And I think this was definitely a lack of experience with the deck. But now we're in a really bad spot because, we got a sort of Book of Life here to survive a bit. We will bring back this Reaper, and then we'll banish a Breaker from their grave, as I believe it's their only monster in grave. Yep, it is indeed. And then we'll just pass back to them. We're still in not a bad spot here overall, but they're going to tribute that gold for the Zaborg. They're attacking for 2,400, and now we are in a very bad spot. They're going to pass back to us. We draw Last Will, so we can actually use that in conjunction with an Instant Fusion here to survive for one more turn. So we'll go for the Reaper there. We'll activate the Last Will, and then in end phase, that'll pop itself. We get out a turtle in the end phase and pass back to them. So as you see, if they had actually inflicted the ceasefire at the right order in the chain, then we would have actually been dead here by this point. But, you know, that happens, and, you know, misorderings happen all the time. They're going to bring out a Hydrogeddon here, attacking into a Pyramid Turtle, and we get out another Pyramid Turtle. They get out another Hydrogeddon, so they're getting out a ton of monsters on their side of the field. I'm not really sure if there's a good way where we can actually win this game, especially since our Instant Fusion is just going to be dead at this point because we don't have a way to gain back more life. But we can still try our best here. Maybe we'll draw into a Book of Life again, and we can do something with that. But it's not looking too good for us here. They're going to crash the Zaborg into the Koki, and we draw into a Zaborg of our own, and that's not going to do it here, so that'll be the end of the game. So again, if I had played this one a little bit differently, cracked an Instant Fusion early, in the case we drew into a Book of Life, because we had another Instant Fusion in hand in case we drew into a Monarch, maybe things would have turned out differently. But against a burn deck, it can be a scary proposition to pay life points extraneously, so I chose not to do it. But again, it shows that, you know, this deck does take some skill to pilot, you know. It's not just something that you can plug and play. You got to actually figure out what to do in a given spot and what lines to go for to prepare for your draws later on. But this one, the only match that I got with the deck. Let's dive into the next match now and see how we continue to do. Okay, we got a game here against the World of Dark Arm God. If you can guess in the channel, always a pleasure to have them on. We're diving into the games, and they will win the rock, paper, scissors. So they do get to start, but they're on a deck that has no extra deck, which is a good sign for me. It means it's probably not an ODK deck or a 5-headed dragon deck or something like that, which is why you generally want to play an extra deck, even if you are not playing things to go into the fusion deck, because, you know, like, it's a bluff, right? We know off the bat that they're not playing certain decks here, so we can potentially play differently than we would have otherwise. But that Sonic Bird also reveals that they're probably not on a sort of fusion strategy because they're on a ritual strategy. They search a contract with the Abyss. They're probably on, like, Demise stuff, like Demise ODK stuff. Can't really do the stuff that you do later in the game's history with, like, the Doom Dozer and, you know, advanced ritual arts, things like that. But you can still play Demise if you want to here. We go for a coffee, and they will solemn that, so that's a big play, getting down to 4,000 life points this early. And we're going to attack in for 2,200 more. So, you know, we're cutting them down even further, and we've got this mirror force here that we're going to set and pass back to them. The reason I wanted to get this aggressive here was because Demise needs 2,000 or more life points to actually use its effect, and we got them below 2,000, so now we don't really need to worry about Demise's effect to blow up the entire board. So they're going to think about this a bit, go for heavy on our back row, hit a mirror force, which, you know, that's fine. It's 1-for-1 trade. They bring out Sidra to crash into our Sidra, and then they'll bring out another Sidra to end their turn. We draw an Exiled Force, so that should be pretty good for us. We can either tribute over the Warrior Lady here, or we can just go for Exiled Force. I think going for the Exiled Force is the better play overall. We can always go for Mobius when they've got back row on field. So we're just going to pass back to them. I feel like we don't need to set this Heavy Storm as a bluff. If they set any back row next turn, we are going to Heavy Storm it. And we don't necessarily want to lose the Heavy Storm in case they do have back row that actually is live. They're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw an Instant Fusion as well. So, you know, even if their back row is something chainable, that they chain a Heavy Storm to deal with our Warrior Lady, we can then go Instant Fusion, tribute over for Mobius. So I feel pretty good about this. We just go for heavy, and that'll just be the end of the game. So yeah, it was just a Mirror Force set, so I'm very glad we were able to clear that. And they did have the Demise and the contract, but they didn't have the materials to actually pull it off. So we're going into game 2. I don't really change anything in siding because I feel like our deck is very well suited to deal with this style of deck, because this style of deck is, like, not really the best thing in the world. It's, I think, very easy to play around because it doesn't have the sort of flash OTK potential that it will get once Advanced Ritual Art comes out. But they bring out a DD Assailant set 1, and we'll just bring out a Reaper and set 1 as well. And we'll also set a Mirror Force here too. They've got heavy, we've got TT for later as well. But, you know, I don't think they can really go into Demise that easily right now. And if they do, they're clearing away their assailants as well, which I'm happy to see that gone. And then we've got TT for later too. So, but there's an argument that I should have just set TT here just in case they do manage to pull off Demise on the first turn. But either way, I think we should be fine here. They attack into a Reaper. We'll just MST their back row, see what it is. It's a book, so I'm very glad to see that gone. And now we can go for a Zaborg here, popping the assailant, and then just attacking in their set, seeing what it is. Unfortunately for us, that is an Apprentice Magician. So they're able to bring out a spellcaster from their deck. They're going to bring out another Apprentice Magician instead of like an Old Vindictive or something, which makes you think that they might have an Old Vindictive or a Magician of Faith in hand. I mean, they don't really have any good spells here to go for off Magician of Faith, so they could also just not be playing Old Vindictive. They might just be playing the Faith there. But either way, we should be in a pretty good spot here. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw into a Thestalos here. We're going to tribute over that Zaborg there for a Thestalos to rip a card out of their hand preemptively, because again, I feel like they could have an Old Vindictive Magician set, and we don't necessarily want to lose our monster right away to that. So I'd rather just bring out Thestalos, rip a card out of their hand, and then attack in to what I think is the Old Vindictive. It is a Faith though. So that is the other potential option that they had in hand to go for off of the Apprentice there. And they're going to get back that Book of Moon. We're going to set this TT now because we did hit a Demise here. But in case they go for another Demise, I'd rather have this TT set. And I know that they've got a Book of Moon coming down, so they might have a way to clear the Thestalos as well. So I feel like it's fine just setting this up. They're going to go for a Manju there, and they're going to search out a Relinquish. So it seems like they're on both Relinquish and the Demise stuff, which makes sense why they're playing Contract, because Contract can go into any Dark Ritual monster as long as you've got the exact level to tribute for it. So their deck's starting to make a little bit more sense here. I'm just going to attack in to the Manju here. I attack in first with the Thestalos because I know about the Book of Moon. So if they Book of Moon down the Thestalos, we then tribute over that for another Thestalos here. And that is indeed what we're going to do. We're going to try and rip a card out of their hand. We hit the Relinquish. So we're just hitting all the ritual cards with the Thestes. And we just pass back to them. They go for another Manju here, and they'll search out a Contract with the Abyss here. If they've got a Demise in hand, they can go for that, but we are instantly TTing that. We're going to ask about Prio, of course, but that's definitely a TT card if I've seen one. We draw into an Instant Fusion here, and we're going to choose not to go for that, saving the Sidras in hand for later. We could have gone for the Instant Fusion, tributed over the Reaper for a Cyber Dragon here. But we do have a Reaper in graveyard anyways, so if we do want to go for a play like that later, we can Book of Life back the Reaper to rip a card out of their hand potentially. But they're just going to send another pass back to us, and we're just going to attack over that Manju. They did leave an attack, which tells me that they probably have something here to stop this, but it looks like they do not. So we're very happy about that. We're going to keep the Ring in hand for later in case they do go for like a crazy play with Demise or something. And they're just going to pass back to us. We draw a Book of Life here. So now we can actually get Kraken here. We can potentially Instant Fusion out the Reaper, Book of Life that back, get a hand rip in, and feel pretty good about that. But I'm going to choose to go for that now to just get that play online. I figure this will probably bait something out. We're going to tribute over for the Sidra there, and now we're going to attack in to the set, and it's a Apprentice Magician there. So they will be able to get out another spellcaster from deck if they've got one, but it looks like they do not. So again, I had to read that they did not have like that Old Vindictive in deck. It looks like they're just playing them off to tribute for the Relinquish, not playing that Old Vindictive, and they do get a bit punished for not playing it there if they do need to have it. But we're going to pass back to them, and they're going to bring out a Sidra. The reason we set this ring was because they're so close to death that, like, I do think if they've got Heavy Storm or something here, we can just chain ring, put them in a really, really bad spot. So they're going to pre-mat here, and that pre-mat should do it. We now chain the ring to the Sidra, and that should be the end of the game. If they've got, like, My Body as a shield, that's a bit awkward for us here. So, there is an argument to ringing one of our own monsters, especially because Book of Moon is gone already. But I figured this was better in case they, like, had to use, like, Raigeki Break or something to pop whatever we target with the ring. So yeah, I feel like this is probably better for us. And if they do, like, My Body to shield, they're down to 400 life points, but I think should be easy to clear, especially because we got Book of Life to bring back this Reaper here. So, luckily, it does work out for us. They've got Solemn, so that will also cut their life down quite a bit here. And they've got Megamorph as well to boost up that Cyber Dragon here. But it does work out for us because they run into a Mirror Force, and they've used up that Solemn. They don't have another. And there's like, yeah, that's the end of the game. Yeah, the last card they had was Call, which would not really do much here. I mean, you could call back, like, I guess the DD Assailant here, but we're going to be booking lifing back the Reaper on the Nightmare probably next turn. And even if we don't, actually, that is still lethal because they call back the Assailant, we attack over with one, then we attack directly with the other. So, yeah, it's just going to be the end of the game either way. And it shows how powerful this deck can be. Like, I did not feel any trouble dealing with this ritual deck here. So against more jank decks or rogue decks, this deck definitely does take some names. The Monarch core is very strong, and adding these Book of Life to just add further extension is very nice as well. Okay, we got our next game against Scud Zero, another frequent guest on the channel. We're diving right into that game there. And we do lose rock, paper, scissors, so we are going second. But Monarch is generally not too upset about that. We've got many ways to get out a Monarch on board on turn 2. So I feel pretty good about this. Graceful plus Treeborn plus Reaper plus Book of Life. I mean, this is such a good hand. This is like one of the best hands the deck can produce. We're going to go for Graceful here, draw 3, pitch 2. And we're just going to pitch a Treeborn Frog there and a Turtle. I think I should have pitched the Reaper instead to bring back with the Book of Life. But, you know, I pitched the Turtle because we can still bring back that later. If they've got ways to disrupt our plays, we can always use Reaper as a defensive option. But given our hand is a lot of aggression, I'm not really sure how necessary that is. But we go for an Exile here, just clearing their set, and it is a Mother Grizzly. So it seems like they're probably also on Monarchs. Some decks play Mother Grizzly to get into Treeborn Frog as quickly as possible here. They're going to go for a Breaker here, pop our back row. We are going to MST pop their back row and hit a Widespread Ruin. So I'm happy to see that gone. They're going to attack in for 1600 here, and then they're going to pass back to us. We draw Confiscation, which is really nice here as well. We can bring back our Treeborn Frog, though, and then go for the Confi now. See what they're working with before deciding what to go into. We see that they've got a Pot, a Sidra, an Exiled, and a Sidra here. Can't deal with these Sidras, so we're just going to get rid of the Exiled there to, you know, stop the thing that would deal with one of our Monarchs once it's hit the field. That makes Sidra a little bit less threatening for us here. We're going to go for Zaborg, tribute over the Frog, and pop the Breaker. And here's where the Book of Life into the Reaper would have been a nice play as opposed to Book of Life into the Turtle, because we could get another hand rip there out of their hand. But as is, it's just not to be here based on our past plays. And they do top deck into Zaborg there to pop our Zaborg. And now it's a bit awkward for us here. I mean, they would have had this line either way because, you know, they had 2 Sidras. So even if we hit a Sidra, they'd still have another. But still, you know, it might have been a bit better for us if things had turned out a bit differently. And we could have still gone for a Pyramid Turtle here to crash into the Zaborg if we had it in hand as well. So we're going to go for the Pyramid Turtle here, banish the Exiled Force there, and tribute out a Mobius, popping nothing. But now we can go for another Book of Life here to bring back that Turtle yet again, and then go into the Koki that way and banish another card here. The reason we do this is we don't want them to get Avarice live, so I figure it's better just to, you know, banish 2 cards from grave. They're going to have 3 monsters in grave here and a Sidra, but, like, you know, they'd have to find a way to get that 5th monster in grave here, which would not necessarily be the easiest thing in the world. So I feel like there's a pretty good line of play there. They draw into another Zaborg, then they drew into another Zaborg, but I feel like this is fine. There's also an argument I should have crashed the Turtle into the Zaborg to bring out a Koki, and then had that on field as well as a bigger threat. I think that probably would have been the correct move to do, because then I can potentially, you know, crash into their set and do stuff with that. But I didn't think of it at the time, or if I did, you know, it was too risky because I'm at 3k life. So I don't know. I think it's fine doing what I did. I shouldn't have left the Turtle on attack. That I'll tell you that much. I was just sort of making some mistakes over the course of this game. I also forgot to bring back Treeborn on the previous turn when I was going for the Mobius play, which maybe would have been better just to have it on field as a defensive option. But yeah, it's a bit of a shoddy gameplay from me here. But I think ultimately this turns out fine. And the misplays that we made don't cost us too much here. But they're going to flip up a Graveyard Spy, bring on another Spy from deck, attack over Treeborn Frog here, send another pass back to us. We draw a Koki here. We're going to go for Raigeki Break, pitch the Braincon from hand to pop that back row. We could have pitched the Koki instead, but I've used up 2 Book of Life, so, you know, I don't necessarily want Koki in grave. I'd rather have it on field. And now we get to bring back that Frog in standby because we used the Raigeki Break there. We're going to tribute off that Treeborn Frog for the Koki here, attack the Koki into that defense position Graveyard Spy, and then attempt to attack this Turtle into that attack position Graveyard Spy, and bring in another monster on top of that. They're going to go for Ring on our Turtle here, so I'm very glad I didn't keep the Braincon around, because it actually would have been a liability here, potentially, with that Ring Destruction in the back row. But they're going to tribute Set into 5 monsters in grave for the Avarice. So now the Avarice is live here. They're able to shuffle back all their monsters, draw 2 good ones here. They've already normal summoned this turn. So that is a nice thing for us. But if they draw like more back row or things like that, then that could be a bit awkward for us here. They draw 2, and they're just going to pass back to us. And we draw into Heavy, which is not really the most useful thing here. I actually don't bring back the Treeborn Frog. And this is actually an intentional move. Earlier in the game, I forgot to bring back Treeborn Frog. This one actually was intentional, because my reasoning is if they've got Econ, like plus Sidra, I just lose the game off that. And I don't necessarily want to lose the game off that. So I feel like just having this Koki here is good enough defense. If they summon out Zaborg to pop the Koki, then our Reaper can wall up for a little bit. So, you know, I feel like this is ultimately a fine play. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Zaborg here. And now we can bring back the Frog because we're going to be tributing that for a Zaborg. So we're going to tribute that Zaborg, pop the monster, and then get in for 4,800. So we did manage to win that game pretty handily despite our misplays over the course of that. So I think that also shows some of the power of this deck for sure. Like having the Book of Life just to disrupt graveyard plays can come up as well. So we're diving into the next game here. They will be going first. They've got a coffee for us. They're able to rip a card out of our hand here. And they are going to, I mean, this is a tough hand to coffee, honestly, because like a lot of the things that they'd want to get rid of, we have ways to sort of turn online. Like we got Book plus Knock. We got Knock as well. If they just want to set something, we can knock it. But if they get rid of Knock, then we can Sidra out and then tribute summon Zaborg, pop their monster anyways. Like if they take Zaborg, we got the, like, we got so much here. So this is going to be really annoying for them. They're going to take the Knock, just getting rid of that banish on their monster there. They're then going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Dust Shoot here, which is pretty good. We did bring in the Dust Shoots because we're up against Monarchs, and Dust Shoot is pretty good against Monarchs. We're going to tribute this Zaborg and hit a legendary Jujitsu Master. Very clever card in this deck because that puts Monarchs back on top of the deck. And if you don't have things like Treeborn and Rotation already, then that can be a death knell for the deck. We go for a Dust Shoot here. We could have also potentially waited for them to do something before Dust Shooting, but I don't know. I think it's fine just to get proactive with it, see what they've got. And we see they've got all monsters here. So they've got Sidra exiled, Breaker exiled, and Great Future Spy. So I'm very glad I didn't wait for them to do something. The first thing they would have done here would be to summon out Cyber Dragon. If I Dust Shooted then I couldn't actually deal with these exiled forces here. So what I'm going to take is the Sidra, because now, you know, they can still bring an exiled Pop or Zaborg here, but that's all they can do this turn. They can't get in for 2,100 more damage. So yeah, I'm very happy about that. Overall, they're going to bring out an exiled Pop our Zaborg and then pass back to us. We draw Instant Fusion. We could potentially get that in grave for our Books of Life because we don't have a zombie in rotation already. But again, I like saving it for when we actually have a Monarch to do something with. So we're just going to pass back to our opponent. They bring out a Breaker here, and they're going to try and break our back row. We book that down to deal with the Breaker. They're going to set one, pass back to us. We draw another Dust Shoot here. Dust Shoot's kind of dead, but we got Raigeki Break to pitch the Dust Shoot. So, you know, I'm pretty happy with that. They flip up a Breaker, attacking for 16. I don't really feel like it's worth Raigeki breaking that. They're going to set two, pass back to us. We draw a Comfy here, so we can get a peek at the last card in their hand. I'm pretty sure it's Exiled Force. It is indeed the Exiled Force there. So we clear that, and then we'll pass back to them. In standby, we could potentially Raigeki break, and we do indeed Raigeki break. We don't want them getting 2,400 damage on board there. We're going to pop that Spy. They bring out a Grizzly here and attack in for 3k, and things are getting pretty grisly for us, honestly. They can kill us next turn if we don't draw into something like a Monarch here. We still have no idea what their back row is. We draw into a Cyrus. We're going to special summon that out. And we're actually not going to attack in. We're just going to set this Instant Fusion, pass back to them. They've got an MST to deal with that Instant Fusion. But, you know, that was just a bluff there, honestly. But we don't want to run into like Widespread Ruin or something to lose the game on the spot there. They draw into a Zaborg, and so it wouldn't have mattered either way. We were just dead here. And the back row was indeed a Widespread Ruin, so I'm glad I held the Sidra. But, that's how it goes sometimes. So we're going into game 3. Again, I think I keep the deck, you know, not too changed. I bring in the Dust Shoots. But I think that's largely the big change that I make with it. But yeah, I go for Coffee here just to get a peek at what they're working with, to see their hand. They've got a Call, an Exiled, a Zaborg, a Sangan, and a TT here. And I think this game I tunnel a bit too much on the Sangan because I'm like, I've got DD Warrior Lady to deal with the Sangan. I really want that to go through. So what I ultimately decided to take here is the TT, because what I don't want them to do is just setting a card first turn, and then, you know, us bringing out Warrior Lady, them flipping TT to pop their own Sangan and our Warrior Lady, and then getting that search off Sangan. So I don't want that to happen, and I figure DD Warrior Lady can keep cards out of grave for call. And if they do go exiled here, you know, we get Treeborn Frog in grave as well. So I feel like there's a pretty good opening. They're just going to set 2, pass back to us, though. And we draw into a Turtle. We're going to bring out this DD Warrior Lady, attack into the set, thinking that's Sangan. Unfortunately for us, it's the legendary Jujitsu Master that we saw earlier. Now, we can banish both of these just to make it so that we're drawing a live card on the top of our deck here. But, you know, I do have Soul Exchange plus a Monarch here to rip a card out of their hand. So I'm not too afraid of drawing the Warrior Lady because we got other things to do with it here. So I'm fine just taking that 300 and then passing back to them. They are going to tribute that legendary Jiu-Jitsu Master for a Zaborg and pop our Treeborn Frog here, which will come back next turn, so we can tribute that for a Thestalos potentially. But they're going to attack in for 2,400. We draw into Warrior Lady, and now we're in a bit of an awkward spot, actually, because if we do tribute this Frog for Thestalos, crash in with Zaborg, they get in for more damage. We're at 4,300, and we're dropping life points pretty quickly. So what I actually want to do here, and this may seem weird, but I do soul exchange out this Thessalos to rip a card out of their hand and also deal with that Zaborg. We also know about the Call of the Haunted set. So, like, if they call back their Zaborg and then they got 2,400 on board again, that's pretty bad for us. So, I do that, and I hit a Braincom, which is about the best thing I could have hit out of their hand, because Braincom would allow them to get really aggressive here. Maybe not lethal damage aggressive, but, like, still very, very aggressive. Actually, yeah, I think they would have lethal damage here if they had kept the Exiled in hand. Like, we hit Sangan here instead of the Braincon. Then they would have been able to go Exiled Force. Actually, Sangan's also lethal. Yeah, so if we had hit anything except for Braincon, they would have had lethal here because they've got Call of the Haunted set most likely. And they'd be able to call back this Borg, attack over the Frog with whatever else they had, and then Braincon away the Thessalos to deal lethal damage there. So, yeah, that was a very, very good hit for us. A very, very lucky hit, because otherwise we would have lost the game. As is, now they're just going to go for Exiled, pop our Thessalos, and pass back to us. We draw Zaborg, which is not bad. We bring out a Turtle here, attack in for 1,200. And that's going to chip in a bit. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. And we draw Ring of Destruction here. I go for the DD Warrior Lady just in case they don't have a way to deal with, or not deal with, but like defend their life points except for the Sangan. Because they know about the DD Warrior Lady, so they are not prone to commit it to board, but they might just have to at this point. And it is a Grizzly, which we kind of do have to banish because, again, if they get Treeborn Frog, that's a bit annoying for us. But actually, in hindsight, did I really have to banish this? I maybe didn't, because they had Call of the Haunted set, which is kind of a sticky back row for them. So if they did go for Treeborn, then they don't necessarily have the best way to keep it from coming back. So I don't know. I maybe didn't have to DD Warley there. But either way I did, just to deprive them of a monster on board. And I set this ring pass back to them. They're going to set 1. We're going to tribute off that Treeborn Frog for Zaborg. Yes, this does get them a search. And I had the read that it probably was Sangan. But this is 3,600 damage, and we got ring set. So this will be lethal if it all goes through correctly. And so we are going to try and push for that. And we do indeed manage to push a fair bit for that. So we're going to pass back to them. And they're going to just activate Braincon on our Zaborg. And we're just going to flip a ring targeting Zaborg. And that should be the end of the game unless they've got something there. And that will indeed go through. So yeah, that's just going to be the end of that game. So we did get lucky that game with hitting the Braincon. Because again, if we didn't hit the Braincon, we would have lost that game. But I think if I'd played that maybe a little bit better, things would have turned out differently. Like if I'd banished the Legendary Jiu-Jitsu Master with the Warrior Lady instead of stacking it to the top of the deck, I wouldn't necessarily be in as bad of a spot in terms of life points. So I don't know, there's things I could have done differently there. But either way, I think this was a pretty good game here overall. And yeah, they did have the call set indeed. They had Thessalos as well. So yeah, I think we played this one pretty well here overall. But this wasn't the last game that I got against Scout Zero. To close out my coverage of Chimeratech, we actually played a pretty jank matchup. I was playing this deck, but they played a jank deck that I feel like is a good way to end out my coverage of this format. Then we got our second game against Scout Zero here, and our final game of the regular Chimeratech format coverage here. And normally to end my coverage of these formats, I often show off like alt win cons or FTKs or things like that. But here, I don't know. There's just so many cool decks in Chimeratech format. Like, I don't really feel the need to show that off, especially because it hasn't really changed from previous formats like Stein and stuff. So, I figure I might as well let my opponent show that off. So they are playing a deck that is a bit alt win con-y. They did have the upstart there, but that doesn't necessarily key us into the fact that it's an alt win con deck. We'll attack in to a Tomato, which will go into a Sangan. Still, we're not really, in on the idea that it's alt win con yet until we activate this Comfy, get a peek at their hand, and see that they have got a Thunder of Ruler there along with a Big Shield Gardna. And this is just setting off the alarm bells in my hand. I'm like, oh no, this is going to be a deck. This is going to be a game. So what we take here is we take the Reaper because we don't really have a good way to deal with Reaper. We get Heavy in case they, set a bunch of back row here. But Thunder of Ruler activates in standby phase, so we probably won't get the opportunity to Heavy that. But I'm pretty sure we can use Heavy later on to good effect. As is, Moth isn't really getting back anything too threatening for us, just the upstart Goblin there. Big Shield we can deal with just with more monsters. Like, for instance, if we summon out Treeborn Frog and attack into Big Shield with the Cyber Dragon and then attack in with Frog, we're sitting pretty there. So, I feel like we're in a pretty good spot overall. I set the Heavy, just hoping that they, feel comfortable committing more back row into that Heavy. They're going to activate Final Countdown, their win con for the deck. So if you don't know, Final Countdown is just after 20 turns after activation, you win the game. So now we're sort of at a race against the clock. And so we bring out the Treeborn Frog in attack just to get in for some chip damage here. They search out a Wing Karibo, which can potentially stem off some of that damage there that they'd otherwise be taking. We set a Ring. Again, this sort of baits them into setting more into the heavy, and we can use Ring at any time to pop our guys. So I'm not too concerned about that. They are going to set one, pass back to us, and we will draw an Instant Fusion. That's really good for us here. Because it actually lets us do some pretty cool plays. So we go for Instant Fusion here. We will bring out that Reaper on the Nightmare, and we will tribute that for a Cyber Dragon. Now we can book back that Reaper on the Nightmare, and this can get around things like Wing Karibo that we saw them search out from hand, because we can just attack indirectly with the Reaper on the Nightmare first, and rip a card out of their hand, deprive them of another piece of defense. So this is actually working out really well for us here overall. We switched the Frog to defense just in case that sets Mirror Force. I don't think it is, but if it is, might as well keep a card on field. But yeah, if it's Mirror Force, we're kind of cooked. But like, it is what it is. It's just a Woboku instead. So I'm very glad that that was not the Mirror Force there. We're going to attack in to that Big Shield Gardna, and I'll switch to attack, and we're just going to pass back to them. I wanted to attack into it just to know what it was so I could play around it potentially on the following turns. And knowing that Big Shield Gardna does help me play around things a little bit later. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Breaker here, so Breaker can potentially pop their back row. But in standby phase, they're going to use Thunder of Ruler here to stop us from doing anything. We switch the Reaper on the Nightmare to defense, pass back to them. We don't need to commit Breaker yet, because we don't actually want them to know that we've got a monster that can pop their back row coming down. They're going to set one pass back to us. We will go for a Breaker now, and just pop their back row there, hitting a Gravity Bind. Very happy to see that gone. Now we can attack in for 800, rip a card out of their hand, and we will rip the Thunder of Ruler there. We'll attack in with the Big Shield Gardna, or into the Big Shield Gardna with our Cyber Dragon there, and then attack in with our other Cyber Dragon there, dealing 2,000 damage to them. And now we can attack into their set with the Breaker. I figured this is probably like the Wing Karibo or something, because they don't really have any spells in Grave, but it's the Moth instead, so they're going to get back that Upstart to dig deeper into their deck to try and draw ways to deal with our board. I think that makes sense. But it is a good sign for us because it does show that they're getting a little bit desperate here. They're going to draw one off that, then they're going to set one, set another, and actually they're going to set their whole hand. They did think about that for a little bit. Decided just, I don't want to keep losing cards to the Reaper, so I'm going to set all these. And that is very, very good news for us. We will go for heavy here, and then we'll chain to the heavy. We will chain a Ring and target our Cyber Dragon to deal 2,100 damage to them. And I'm very glad we went for the heavy there because they had Mirror Force. So very happy to see that gone. And now we're in a really, really good spot. We can attack in directly for that 800 there. They don't have any cards in hand to lose. And then we can attack in with the Wing Karibo, or into the Wing Karibo, that is, and pass back to them. They're just going to admit defeat there because they just drew into another Wing Karibo, which won't quite help them against this board. So Reaper on the Nightmare, really, really good against this style of deck. Just, sort of surpassing all their defenders and things like that, and ripping cards out of their hands. So very, very good stuff. In siding, I bring in like decrees. I bring in just things to really hit this deck. So I feel pretty good about my post-siding plan. And that's often what happens with FTK decks is like, or not necessarily FTK, but this is not an FTK deck, but like all win-con decks, they can potentially win the first game. They really are hoping to win that first game because games 2 and 3, people often bring in side deck tech that can just annihilate them. They're going to go for the final countdown here, drawing in on the first turn. And they're going to set 2 back row, pass back to us. We draw into Graceful Charity. We're going to go for that Graceful Charity there. Draw 3, pitch 2, and there's a really, really good set of cards to pitch. We're going to pitch a Zaborg and a Raigeki Break because Raigeki Break kind of conflicts with Decree here on board. So I want to get this Decree as live as possible, as early as possible. So I figured pitching the Raigeki Break is a good thing for us. We're going to bring out this Reaper, try and rip a card out of their hand, but they've got a Scapegoat there to wall up a little bit. So that's a bit unfortunate for us. We will just get into one of those tokens, just clear it out of the way. And then main 2 will set the Decree, pass back to them. They are going to set 1, pass back to us. In end phase, we're just going to decree that to shut off their traps in case they've got like Wobokus or Thunder's Rulers or things like that. We'll then tribute over the Reaper for Thestalos here, ripping a card out of their hand and ripping a level of Mary B, which I'm very happy to see gone because we don't really have the best way to deal with that there. We're going to go for a Last Will, bringing out an Exiled Force here. And then we can even go for a Book of Life on the Reaper. I don't really feel like that's necessary at this point in time, but it's something that we can do at a later time if we want to. Actually, they don't have any monsters, so we can't do that yet. So that's why we didn't really do that there. But again, even if we could, I'm not really sure it would be necessary to do that here. So you draw into Treeborn Frog. We're just going to bring out the Sangan and attack into the token there. Attacking directly with the Exiled Force there and attack in with the Thestalos. That will all go through, so I feel very good about that. They unfortunately do draw Swords Feeling Light, so that will wall us up for a couple turns here, and that'll put 6 additional counters on final countdown by the time it's gone. So we really got to hope that we got something good to do against their stuff by the time we reach that point. We bring out Jinzo, which is a pretty funny card here. We can do that. Tribute that out to get a DD Warrior Lady as well. This is just in case they've got a way to deal with Decree. They might not have a way to deal with Jinzo. They're going to go for an upstart here, draw 1. They're going to set 1, pass back to us. We draw into a Comfy, so we can rip a card out of their hand. I feel like that's pretty good. Just getting a peek at what they're working with here. You see they've got 3 traps and a Morphing Jar. Well, I know what I'm taking. I'm taking that Morphing Jar. So that Morphing Jar is gone. They can't use any of those other traps there. And I'm feeling pretty good about the status of our future here. Final countdown is at 12 turns, so that is a bit scary here. They are going to search out Big Shield Gardener to wall up a little bit, but we got Exiled Force to deal with the Big Shield Gardener, so I'm not too concerned about that. So we Exiled Force. Actually, we don't even Exiled Force. We tribute over Exiled Force for Zaborg, and we then go for Book of Life here to bring back that Reaper just in case. But I mean, I don't really see anything that they can do here to get out of this. Well, actually, Flu Summoning Karibo is a way that they can get out of this. Okay. They get to bring out a Wing Karibo from deck here. And that will indeed stop us from getting in for lethal damage. We'll just clear that now, pass back to them, and they will just admit defeat because that last card was just another trap. They had a Final Countdown and a Gravity Bind set as well. So, yeah, unfortunately, the Final Countdown deck was not able to do it here, or maybe fortunately, depending on your view of things. But I figured this would be a good way to end the format coverage here because, you know, I didn't have to show off an alt-win con deck this time. Someone else did. And I think that all win con decks are not really the best in this format. They're just a lot of power level in other decks that can just run over these sorts of decks. And after siding, there are things like Decree and a ton of other back row hate that you can bring in to really hurt these styles of decks. But I really like the Zombie Monarch deck. I think it's really cool. Again, I think it borrows a lot from the tech that was introduced in Edison format, which does show that there is a lot of cross-pollination between these formats. So the more formats you play, the more ideas you can get, and the better you can potentially be. So I hope you enjoyed as always. If you like what you saw here and want to play games in this format, definitely head on over to the YGO from Zero Discord server linked in the description down below. Do all the YouTube stuff like comment, subscribe, grow the community even more so we can hold more big events like the tournament that we're holding in the YGO from Discord server now. Also, big shout outs to my patrons, Rinswin, Portrepcoon, Bren Donker, Tyler Compton, Geomindfest, and Dumptruck. It means a lot that you all support me this way. I encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. I hope that you all enjoyed this video as always, and until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.